Welcome back, brothers and sisters. I'm so glad to have you all here. And today we are going to be talking about some new things that I've kind of come across in the constellations. Now, speaking about the rapture and our most blessed hope, I'm only going to come on here and do a video about it if I come across something that I think that is important and I want to share with y'all. So, as again, this is a puzzle we're all trying to figure out, and I hope that this information that I've come across and put together helps a lot of y'all, because we got to keep watching and we got to keep our hopes up because we know it's coming very, very soon. So, with that said, let me show you some of the things that I have come across in the constellations. Okay, let's talk about a few things first. Now let's go over this verse right here, which I know most of you are familiar with. It's the Revelation 12. And it says, "Now a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a garland of 12 stars. Then, being with child, she cried out in labor and in pain to give birth." Okay, now this is what is important. The woman is Virgo. The woman is Israel. Okay? It's absolutely Israel. Now, we also, most of us know and realize that the child being born is the church. It's Christ in us. Christ is the head of the church. So, what represents this in the heavens, we're going to go over as well. But the really big thing I want to point out here that I know a lot of us have missed, remember, the books aren't going to be opened up to us until until the end. Meaning things are going to be revealed to us, things that we didn't see or understand before. And as things progress, we see things opening up to us. So what have we all been missing? That the woman, it's the woman, she cries out in labor and in pain to give birth. Israel has to be crying out in labor and in pain. Now, we're seeing this now, aren't we? Israel is absolutely in pain. Israel is absolutely crying out. And we are seeing that so much right now with everything they're going through. It's horrible for them right now. Alright, now let me show you the constellations. Let's go back a little ways. This is where I first noticed it. So back, and let's start around November 9th. We can see that Venus, which again represents the church, the bride, all of us, has entered Virgo, the Virgin, which represents Israel. Now what is crazy is if you see right here, Venus is right on the star line and it's following it, and it's going to continue to follow it as it goes, as you can see here. Now when we get to just around the 20th, it starts to leave the track it's been following of all the stars, and it's entering the womb of the Virgin. Now, here we are right now, and it's right in the womb. Now, it's going to slowly move, almost as if, giving birth. And it starts to exit right around December 3rd, December 4th, depending on how you're looking at it. I've seen some talking about, like the birthing chair, and that's possible. It could be that. So if we're looking around December 8th, we're going to see that by all appearances, the child has been born, us. And what's also interesting is the moon is right there next to it. Now, it's possible as well, though, that if this goes new moon to new moon, from what it's showing is the estimate for the new moon is going to be around December 12th. So that also could be what we're looking at Or, it could also be as early as the 8th or 9th. But as you can see at this point, by December 12th, the child is born. Okay, so the Virgo, the Virgin, is crying out in pain. But what else do we see here? Alright, so we can see that Mars, which represents Satan, or the Antichrist more specifically, has moved into Scorpio, which is also the seed of Satan. So they're going to be in the same place right around December 11th, December 12th. Now, if you look over, you can see as well Mercury, the messenger, also known as the Oracle of God, has moved into Sagittarius, and that is the rider on the horse. The rider on the horse carrying the bow, as we've seen in Revelations. Also, the great flood of Noah occurred when the autumnal equinox was occurring in the sign of Scorpio. And as you can see right here, we're seeing this in the constellation as we get up and through December. You can see the movement right here, which I find very, very interesting, which I'm sure you do as well. Okay, so in one of my last videos, I talked about Taurus. And with Taurus, this is what we're going to see in 2030. And this is when Saturn is in Taurus. Now remember, Saturn represents Israel. So in Taurus, we're going to talk about this. Now, this is with Job and the constellations in the Bible. Now, Job, he does not give a detailed account of what we'd refer to as the zodiac, or most people would. I refer to it as a Mazzaroth. But he refers briefly to the constellations that deal with the final judgment. He asks about certain objects in the constellations of Taurus specifically. And it's quite remarkable that the conversation lands on this particular series of stars and some of their sidereal pieces in Taurus, because this is the constellation that deals with the day of the Lord. Note that God refers to a group of stars called Pleiades and the constellation of Orion, both found in and around Taurus. So Pleiades is right there in it. Okay, and then Orion is just right kind of below it, depending on how you're looking at it, right? Okay, so then Job refers to Taurus, whose name in Hebrew is Aish, which means bear. And so that's kind of a clear reference to Ursa Major. And then finally, he talks about the chambers of the south. But what's really, really interesting here is this deals with the day of the Lord. And as we know, okay, when Jesus comes back, he is going to come back to defend his people, to defend Israel. That's where he's going to come back to. And again, the star that represents Israel is in Taurus, which has Pleiades right there. And Pleiades represents the 7 churches. Okay, so Taurus also means the coming judge. So, 2030, this is so significant. If you want more information, go over to my last video on Rapture and you will see quite a bit more about it. In fact, you'll see quite a bit through all my Rapture videos. You should look at all of them. But let's take a look at this. Okay, so Nishimaru is going to be in Centaur at the same time that we're looking at December 9th, 12th area. Now, in the ancient star chart, the Centaur is pictured as being half human and half horse. That, however, is not the original concept of the constellation. The name Centaur simply means 2 natures. Okay, obviously it's referred to the fact that since the seed of the woman was virgin born, he was not the seed of man. His two natures then represent a combination of humanity and deity. He is God, clothed in human flesh, and therefore can rightly be called Emmanuel, which means God with us. So, with Nishimaru being, spotlighted with this comet, I do think is very, very significant, because I think it's letting us know that, Jesus is actually coming for us at the same time, coming to call his people home. Very, very possibly. And I definitely hope, but I do know it is significant. These comments mean something. I know they do. Okay, so let's talk about Scorpio again, okay? So this is a constellation up here where as I just showed you, has a lot going on, and it also has Mars inside of it. So Scorpio, it represents a scorpion, right? Although in some early cultures, he is depicted as a dragon or a serpent up there, not a scorpion. And in the 7th century BC, he's shown trying to seize the lamp. Scorpio wants to be the light of the world. In other cultures, Scorpio is seen trying to sting the heel of the mighty Ophiuchus, who is seen in the ancient star charts. He's the one wrestling with the great snake, right in the, I'll show you right here. And that's called the serpens. So while the scorpion is trying to wound the heel of Ophiuchus, the head of Scorpio is being wounded at the same time. It is said that the word Scorpio means the lawless one, and as such represents the seed of the serpent, the Antichrist, as I was telling you just a little bit ago. The star in the heart of Scorpio is all called Antares. When seen in the nighttime sky, it gives the appearance of a deep red color and means the wounding. Now, while Ophiuchus is crushing the head of Scorpio, he is seen binding the serpent, who is trying to gain the northern crown. So, the other thing here, too, is like we have read just in Revelations, it talks about when the child is born, right? The man-child. Then the dragon is going to try and come and get the child, but he's going to be whisked off to heaven. And so there's been a lot of people who've wondered, and been talking about, well, what represents the dragon. It very, very possibly and most likely is Scorpio, because Scorpio used to actually be a dragon, as I just explained to you. And here again, of course, is Aquarius. And Aquarius has Saturn in it. Saturn represents Israel. Aquarius represents God's judgment being poured out on Israel. Now, it's important to know that by around April 11th, this coming April 11th, Saturn leaves Aquarius. It is no longer right dead in the center, and it is very, very significant that it's dead center in there right now, and that in 2030 it is dead center in Taurus. Okay, Taurus represents a lot, as I talked about in my last video as well. Represents the harvest, the reaping, the separation of the wheat from the goats. There's a whole lot to Taurus. And Saturn as well. But understand, this is when God's judgment is going to be poured out. And that's what tribulations is about. Tribulations is about bringing the Hebrew Jews to know Jesus, to bring them back to God, and to know that Jesus Christ is their Messiah. And 1/3 of them will be saved. Now, what is also very interesting to note is that we all know that on October 7th, Israel, the Hebrew Jews, were attacked viciously and terribly by Hamas and others who were acting in a terrorist capacity. And we know what they did. They did horrible, horrible things. I know a lot of people don't realize just how truly evil their acts were. I can only say they were medieval, things you only read about normally from a very long time ago. They did to women and children and teenage boys and just babies. It's awful. But exactly from October 7th to this December 12th is 66 days, which, I think that might also be leading to something. I'm sure y'all can think that as well. Now, we're seeing anti-Semitism just like crazy all over the world, and it is horrible, horrible to see. I see people online saying that, the Jews can't be real Jews because they can't be anti Semitic because they're not Semites. Well, what, some of these people don't understand is where the word Semite comes from. And the name Semite comes specifically from Shem. And the reason it comes from Shem, which, as we know, was the oldest of Noah's 3 sons, is because it's in the Greek and Latin versions of the Bible. Shem becomes Sam. Neither Greek nor Latin has any way of representing the initial sound of the Hebrew name, and that's where Semite comes from. Now, later on, like in the 1900s, there was some German guy who wrote it more on geographical location and turned it into Arabic, and also through some linguistics, but he got it completely wrong. So any of y'all who are out there thinking that Semites can't be white, so they can't be the Israelis, you're wrong. The Semites are literally and only the Hebrew Jews. Hebrew means to come it's actually a Hebrew word. Some people are saying that it means human. Hebrew does not mean human. Hebrew means to cross the water, and Hebrew was given to Abraham because he crossed the water, the river, from his original land that he grew up with his mom and dad over into the land of Canaan, the land of Israel that was given to him by God himself. And we know that this is interesting too because this is around 1921 BC, which is just, a little over 4,000 years ago. Pretty close to it as well, honestly. And then, okay, so here's a little bit more information for you, for those who are trying to say that the Jews we see today cannot be the real Jews because they're white, which is silly, because we also know that when Moses, he got married, and he got married to a Cushite, which means a descendant of Cush. They were called Cushites, and that means that they were black-skinned. Miriam and Aaron spoke, I guess, negatively about Moses for marrying a Cushite woman. Now, that doesn't mean that they were speaking negatively because of her skin color, per se. It just was speaking negatively because they didn't want him marrying outside of, his people, which they normally didn't want them to. They normally wanted them to stay for all sorts of reasons. And there's now, we can actually see why. But why is this significant? Because Moses and Aaron and Miriam would not have brought up the fact that she was a Cushite, which literally means black person, if they were black or they were dark-skinned. No, they wouldn't have. So this shows even more that Hebrew Jews that came from the line of Shem were white. Now, throughout the years and the centuries, of course, we've seen people from other races and colors that have married into the Jewish population. And so, of course, there are some Hebrew Jews now that are darker skinned or are black, that's not the whole point. The point is that all Hebrew Jews that came from Shem were originally white, because we know that black came from Cush, Put, and Canaan, right? And so my point to this is anyone who's trying to say that the Jews we see today are not the Jews of, Shem or Isaac or Moses, that is not correct, okay? You've just got to take a little bit of time to dig and look into the true history of things to come through the truth. To the truth, instead of just, something you see some 19-year-old do a video on for content or for shock over on YouTube or anywhere else that doesn't know what they're talking about. Just take a little time to research it, and you're going to see the Jews we see today are the original Jews, okay? No ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's absolute. They know their lineage. They even know which son of Jacob they descended from. They know their tribes. There were 12 tribes. Now, Jew came from the first son, Judah. He wasn't the firstborn, but he was the first one to be called Jew. His lineage directly from it. Now, it was at a point where only if they were from the lineage of the tribe of Judah, which is where Jesus came from, that they were considered Jews. But then eventually it turned into anyone who was of any of the tribes, any of the 12 tribes, is known as a Jew. So what lets us know even more so now than ever before that we are in the last days. We are in the time before Jacob's trouble begins. There has been so much, and through the years, people have been trying to figure this out and decipher this. And I think what a big thing that we all miss, because the books were not opened up to us yet, is that a lot of people, most of us, nearly all of us, thought that things were going to just kind of be going along as normal. And then suddenly one day, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people just boom, just gone, disappeared. Just like, in Left Behind series and things that we've seen. But what we didn't really, really realize is just how bad things were going to have to be. How bad things were going to get. And what we can't miss, though, is the big picture is how bad things are going to be for Israel. How bad things are going to be for the Jews. Yes, for the rest of the world, we see the birth pains. We see how bad it's getting. But it's getting really, really bad for Israel. And we know that God, He wants to protect His people. He doesn't want His land divided. He doesn't want His word divided. And He is the God of Israel, as we can see in so much scripture throughout the Bible. Just one example is Isaiah 44:6. It says, "This is what the Lord says, Israel's King and Redeemer, the Lord Almighty. I am the first and I am the last. Apart from me, there is no God. He is the one and only true God." And every time we have seen an antichrist, there have been many, many antichrists. In fact, from what I've seen, biblical scholars say they estimate that there's been 7, and this 8th one will be the last. But every single antichrist that we've seen come throughout history has been for persecuting and killing the Jews, okay? And this last one's not going to be any different. And we're seeing more and more things come to fruition with that. And I believe, and I'm starting to see more and more people see this, I've been believing this for a while, that the Antichrist is going to come from the Muslims. Now, granted, look, he's going to have to probably be from the tribe of Dan. We're pretty sure on that, which is Jewish. Dan is judgment. It talks about in the Bible a den of vipers coming from the tribe of Dan. I do think he's going to be of Jewish heritage. But I also do believe that he is as well going to be a Muslim. And don't forget, because I know a lot of us, and I was one of them that was like, oh, the Jews will never, ever accept anyone who's a Muslim as their Messiah. But remember, it says in the Bible, he will send them a strong delusion so that they believe the lie. And what has been shown as to what the symbol of 666 that we've always taken from is the Bible really looks like, it really looks like this in the Bible. And I've got to say, this is the exact symbol that the Muslims use, and it's exactly how it's written in the Bible. So this is what we've always interpreted as 666. The Muslims, they do not worship God. They do not worship the true God. I do believe, as many others do, but they are actually following the father of lies. They are following Satan. I mean, heck, they even say in their Quran to lie to anyone who's not a Muslim. That's not something our God would do. The more you start researching and finding out about what the Quran and their other books say and what they believe, this is all pure evil, and that they are not of God and they are not following God. But it's not only just them, as like I said, the whole world has become wicked and lawless, except for God's people. And who are God's people? God's people are the firstborn are the Jews, and his adopted children are those of us in Christ. Now, plenty of the Jews are being wicked too. There's plenty of wicked people out there who claim to be Christians. I mean, geez, look how many supposed people say they're Christians are out there persecuting the Jews, are out there protesting and marching and spewing hatred for the Jews. That's not Christian. They are not true Christians by any means. And again, we are spiritual Jews, those of us who are in Christ. And we cannot go against what the Bible says. But look at this, and you're going to see how seriously evil it's getting out in the world right now. Okay, so with everything I showed you going on in the constellations and everything that's going to be happening in 2030 with Saturn in Taurus, and as well as right now Saturn being in Aquarius, I have the Venus. Venus is the bride. It's right there. It's in Virgo. I mean, everything about to be born, the man child. I've shown you what Scorpion actually is. It was shown as the dragon before. There is so much with Nishimaru, all of it, as well as everything going on in the world we see right now. And you all know, I could show you a whole lot more. We've got lawlessness everywhere, immigrants coming through, doing all sorts of things. We've still got all the looting and stealing going on. People are not following the letter of the law. So many people thinking they can be something they're not, as we all know. I mean, that infinite genders, allegedly. I mean, the world has gone completely nuts. The world has gone evil and vile. With that and the combination of the constellations and everything that's written in the book, we are absolutely, Jesus is at the door. He is coming for us sometime soon. And I know a lot of people have been watching for the rapture for a very, very long time and been disappointed time and time again. But the difference is now we're not just going off of what the constellations and the book says. We're seeing prophecy before our eyes that's been fulfilled and filled. We know the time is at hand. We're told to watch, so don't stop watching. Don't give up now. We are so close. I can feel it. I know y'all can feel it as well. If you haven't looked at my other Rapture videos, do go and look at them. There's a lot of information on the constellations that still apply to everything we're seeing now. Everything going on. So, look, I'm going to leave y'all with a couple more videos. You really want to see. The big thing is, you know what? If you have been turning on the Jews, you want to stop that if you're a Christian. Stop believing the nonsense of all this, trying to say the Jews aren't real. Khazars, that's not real either. And I can do a video on that proving that they are not Khazarian. Or you can take 2 minutes of research and go see for yourself. It takes 2 minutes to see the Jews we see today are not Khazarian. Absolutely not. That's some more hogwash right there. There's so many lies being perpetuated against the Jews. You've got to realize, you see the majority of the bad people, the majority that are on the side of evil, the majority that are going against Christ, they're the ones that are also against the Jews. They're the ones that are on the side of the Muslims. That right there should tell you all you need to know. That is not the side you want to be on. That is not the side of God. That is not the side God is with, okay? If you are being deceived, and this is the big deception, Satan hates the Jews. He always has. He hates them. He hates all people, but he hates them more than anyone at all, because they're God's firstborn. And God says they're the apple of his eye. He's always loved the Jews. He's always going to. That is who Satan wants to persecute above all else, okay? You do not want to be on that side. If you're on that side, you are not going to make it to heaven. God blesses those who bless Israel. He curses those who go against Israel. Don't be cursed. If you are cursed, you will not enter the gates of heaven. You will not be raptured. And you do not want to go through the tribulation. Now, if you haven't taken a minute, follow me, subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, and we'll get out of here. And I'm going to leave y'all with 2 more videos. Don't miss them, okay? If you have any questions about anything, let me know in the comments, and I will answer them for you, okay? And if you haven't, join my locals, and you can also follow me on X as well as Getter, okay? Love you all. I hope you're doing well. Hope you had a good past few holiday days, and I will see you in the next video. And don't miss out on the end. I've got here very important, good videos right here I'm going to leave y'all with, okay? I will see you soon.
These women here, go to Gaza. You want to go talk in Gaza? These women, they can't talk in Gaza. It's a joke. It's a joke. It's become fashion. It's fashion. It's fashion, this bullshit. It's fashionable. Yes. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, does it? How many bombs? France, in fucking Syria, here, London. But all it is an excuse to hate Jews. It's us. The problem's us, innit? It's us. You think tomorrow, if there was no Israel, this problem would be solved? They fucking kill each other. What, genocide? We're the worst that committed genocide. The fucking population has tripled in the last 10 fucking years. Genocide. These people they're fucking idiots. They're idiots blind by hate.
The Palestinians are peaceful, and that it's not them, it's actually Hamas that's causing all these problems. But that's not the case. Every country that has ever had a large amount of Palestinians has regretted it. And that's the reason that none of these Arab countries are willing to accept Palestinian refugees. Don't believe me? Let's go through it. So back in the late 80s, the nation of Kuwait was a haven for Palestinian refugees. However, they were all expelled in 1991. Now, what could have caused an Arab nation like Kuwait to expel 300,000 Palestinians, representing nearly 20% of the entire population of Kuwait? Well, that was because a year prior, elected leaders of the Palestinians in Kuwait actually supported Saddam Hussein's invasion. After Kuwait, with the U.S.'s help, successfully defended themselves from Iraq, they found that those Palestinian organizations had actually been aiding Saddam Hussein, trying to destabilize and destroy the government of Kuwait. They kicked them the fuck out. This certainly wasn't the first time this happened. A couple decades earlier, there was a lot of Palestinian organizations throughout Jordan. Those organizations openly called and protested for the removal of Jordan's king, as well as the destruction of the entire Jordanian monarchy. See, at that time, the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, actually had its own armies operating within Jordan. And they used those armies to try to destabilize the entire country, all in an effort to punish Jordan for not being able to defeat the Israelis. These armies even went into the capital city of Amman, where they attacked, robbed, and even kidnapped Jordanian citizens, all in the name of collecting financial assistance for their war against Israel. When the Jordanian police tried to stop this from happening, PLO armies massacred them. They even had an organization called the PFLP, which stood for the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. This organization hijacked Jordanian planes, diverting the planes to Palestinian-held airfields in Jordan and holding the Jordanian passengers hostage. So in response, in 1970, the Jordanian army actually had to declare war on the PLO. After 10 long months of grueling warfare, Jordanians were finally able to drive the Palestinians out of their country. But before they left, the Palestinian terrorist group known as Black September assassinated the Jordanian prime minister. After being expelled from Jordan, the Palestinians then went to Lebanon. At the time, Lebanon had a conservative Christian Maronite government. The Palestinians, even though they were only guests in that country, they weren't happy about that. So they allied themselves with socialist and Marxist organizations all throughout the country in an effort to overthrow the Christian Lebanese government. And once they started their coup, thousands upon thousands of Palestinian militants flooded into the country, sending the entire nation of Lebanon into civil war. A civil war that ended up being one of the most bloody and chaotic wars in Middle Eastern history. You may not know this if you've never been to Lebanon, but they still haven't recovered from that. So if you're wondering why these Arab nations won't accept Palestinian refugees, it's because they know better. Because unlike bleeding heart liberals in America, the Arabs of the Middle East know their history.